स्टडी IQ IAS, अब तैयारी हुई अफोर्डेबल।
Welcome to StudyIQ's initiative, the podcast. I am your host, Dipansh Moorjani. So tighten your belts because it is time for the podcast of the day. Last few episodes of the podcast have been all about President. We have discussed provisions related to President, powers, roles and responsibilities of President, and we have also discussed all presidents till date. In this episode of the podcast, with the guidance of Sir, we are going to understand all the important provisions of Vice President of India. We will also understand his powers, his roles and responsibilities. Sir, first things first, can you give us some information about Vice President of India, which becomes important for our exam?
Before we start, I want to tell you something, that this is not an advertisement. However, it is a global vision of StudyIQ to provide most affordable and effective education. In our prelims to interview program, that is P2I program, you will be accompanied by the best faculties of the field, and you will also receive the one-to-one mentorship in this program. Moreover, you will receive prelims as well as mains test series according to UPSC syllabus. So, for huge discount, you can use my code AVLIVE. All the links are pinned in the comment section.
The post of Vice President of India is modeled on the lines of American Vice President. In India, Vice President has the second highest office in the country. Article 63 of Indian Constitution mentions the post of Vice President.
Sir, can you throw some light on process of election of Vice President and how this process is different from the election process of President?
There is no direct election for the Vice President of India. However, he or she is indirectly elected by an electoral college. The election process is quite similar to that of the President of India. However, the electoral college that elects President is different from the electoral college responsible for the election of Vice President of India. The difference between the electoral college that elects President and the one electing Vice President of India is as follows. In electoral college for Vice President, both elected and nominated members of both the houses of parliament take part. In presidential election, nominated members are not a part of electoral college. For Vice President's election, state have no role to play, unlike in President's election where state legislative assemblies elected members are a part of that electoral college to elect President. One thing to be noted that the principle of election used in Vice President's election is proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. This method is also similar for the election of President. Whenever the dispute comes for the Vice President's election, Supreme Court decides election disputes related to the office of Vice President. For making these provisions simple for students, I will elaborate a bit on electoral college that elects Vice President of India. An electoral college comprising following categories of people elect the Vice President. The mode of election hence is termed as indirect election. The principle of election used is proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. Elected members of both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha are the part of electoral college to elect the Vice President. And nominated members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are also part of the electoral college to elect Vice President.
Sir, after understanding the election process, we are eager to understand the qualifications and eligibilities for the post of Vice President of India.
An Indian citizen who has completed 35 years of age is qualified to become the Vice President of India, given he is also qualified to be a Rajya Sabha member. However, he should not be a member of either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. And if he is elected as Vice President, when he has a seat in Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha of the houses, he has to vacate that seat. He also is not allowed to hold any office of profit under union government as well as state government or in any public authority or local authority. One thing is to be noted that following people can qualify to become the Vice President directly. Number 1, sitting President of India. Number 2, sitting Vice President of India. Number 3, Governor of State. Number 4, MPs and MLAs.
Sir, what is the term of office of Vice President of India, and are there conditions under which office of Vice President of India can be vacant?
From the date Vice President enters his office, he holds the position for 5 years. However, he can resign from 5 years by handing over his resignation to the President. The other ways where a vacancy is created in the office of Vice President are discussed below. When Vice President completes his term of 5 years. Another, when Vice President resigns. And when Vice President is removed from his office. Even the office of Vice President becomes vacant on the death of Vice President. And even if the election of Vice President is declared null and void by Supreme Court, even then the office of Vice President becomes vacant when his election declared as null and void.
Sir, for President of India, there is a process called impeachment. Whether this process is available for Vice President also?
I'm afraid not. Unlike President of India who can be impeached formally, there is no formal impeachment for Vice President. Rajya Sabha simply can pass a resolution with a majority, and even Lok Sabha can pass this kind of resolution. Also, unlike President of India who can be impeached on the ground of violation of Constitution, there is no such ground mentioned in the Constitution for removal of Vice President of India.
Sir, after understanding all the provisions related to Vice President of India, now we are inquisitive to understand his powers and roles and responsibilities.
The functions of Vice President are such as that he acts as the ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. In this capacity, his powers and functions are more or less similar to those of the Speaker of Lok Sabha. In this respect, he resembles the American Vice President who also acts as the chairman of the Senate, the upper house of the American legislature. Secondly, Vice President acts as a president when a vacancy occurs in the office of the President. Due to his resignation, removal, death, he can act as president only for a maximum period of 6 months, within which a new president has to be elected. Further, when the sitting president is unable to discharge his functions due to absence, illness, or any other cause, the vice president discharges his functions until the president resumes his office. One thing is to remember that the election of a person as a vice president cannot be challenged on the ground that the electoral college was incomplete. And if the election of a person as a vice president is declared void by the Supreme Court, acts done by him before the date of such declaration of the Supreme Court are not invalidated. One thing is to be noted that while acting as a president or discharging the functions of president, the vice president does not perform the duties of the office of the chairman of Rajya Sabha. During this period, those duties of chairman of Rajya Sabha will be performed by the deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha.
Thank you for giving us the information. Dear listeners, we will call it quits for this episode of the podcast. In the next episode, we will be back with another topic. Till then, stay connected with StudyIQ and keep studying. You can listen to StudyIQ Presents the podcast on various audio streaming platforms like Spotify, Hubhopper, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Kuku FM, etc. Links are pinned in the comment section below. Thank you.